Hello everyone, this is going to be mainly for the benefit of the guys on the RustEZ servers, but this will also apply to anyone else that wants to get familiar with the industrial piping system in Rust. So I'm going to be going over a step-by-step guide on how to set up the industrial systems, what the various settings do, the components, and later on get into some of the more advanced bits, and then finally some of the specific parts to the survival servers with RustEZ, because there's more options with connectivity on things like quarries, pump jacks, and various other items that can be incorporated into the industrial system. So we'll start initially with just the basics of how it works and the components. So basic fundamentals, you've got your storage adapter, which is the interface with any of the applicable storages that are on the deployable, so furnaces, chests, as previously mentioned, things like quarries, pump jacks. You've then got the industrial combiner, which allows you to combine multiple inputs into a single output. The reverse of that is the splitter, which will allow you to split one input into multiple outputs. Now these have got quite specific uses and flexibilities depending on where the actual conveyor, which is the bit that actually powers the system. So without the conveyor in any part of the link, you won't actually be able to move any items from one to the other, which I'll show in the first demonstration. So let's get going. So you'd start by applying storage adapters to all the storages that you want to use. You'd then need a conveyor. Use your pipe tool to go from the output to an input, and then an output to an input. And then the conveyors, along with the industrial crafters that we'll get to later on, are the only bits that require power. So you hook in some power, and then this is a very basic system, so I can put items into here. I'll turn the conveyor on and you'll get a very small image come up on here as it begins to move items from one to the other. We've not set any filters or anything for this, so anything we put in this chest will move from one to the other, and you'll get the relative icon for the item moving across. So the next stage you've got when moving from one to the other, you can hold E and go into the filters. So in here I can select a specific item from any of the items and deployables in Rust and apply a filter. Now if I was to put multiple items in here, what you'll find is it will only remove the item that's been filtered. So you can see all that's coming across now is the metal fragments. If I go back and add wood to the filter, you'll find now metal fragments and the wood will start making its way across into the other box, but the high qual will still remain in the other box. So now we're starting to see the wood come over as well. What you can also do with the filters is set a maximum to transfer, so we'll say 300 of each. And what it will do, it will get to 300 of those and then stop. So we'll give it a few seconds. We'll wait for them to top up. And then what you'll see is the metal fragments will stop coming across, but it will continue with the wood until it's got to that 300 maximum. So you can see there the metal frags have stopped at the 300 and the wood's carried on, and now the wood's hit 300, nothing else will get transferred. It will stay as an idle and everything else is here. Subsequently again we could add the high quality metal, and so we want a maximum of 100 on that one, just so it doesn't take as long to speed up. And again you'll see it in the icons as it transfers, and we're starting to get the items come across, and this time the high qual will stay at a maximum of 100. There we go. Now the other thing you can do is you can turn around and say, so I want a minimum of 500 to stay into the container of each. Let's take all of these back out a second. And then what we'll do, we'll split the stacks down to get a little bit less. If we put these into here, it will begin to transfer them again. Now it's going to try to get to the maximum of 300 we assigned of 2 and 100 of high qual, but it wants to leave a minimum of 500 in here. So what you'll find is it will keep transferring, but when it hits the 500 minimum on this side of your input, it will stop trying to pull them out. So there we go, metal frags have got to 500. That's only put 175 in here. We've got the 100 high qual, but that's because we had the minimum of 500 there, but the frags have stopped. And what we'll find is the wood will carry on going because there's still more than 500, but it won't quite be enough to reach 300 still, so that will stop at 281 because it will hit the threshold of 500 in here, which means it's no longer allowed to transfer anymore. If we go back and adjust these to 400 and that one up to 200, so we hit the thresholds another way, that's now going to allow it to finish transferring the wood we need, get closer to how much metal frags we need, and it will put a bit more high quality metal in, but it'll only take it down to the 500, which means it's only up to 124. The wood's now hit its 300 because we stayed above the 400 minimum. The metal frags have gone down to 400, which means we've got to that 275, and again it will stop. If I was to dump some more metal frags in, it'll now carry on transferring. It's hit 300 because that's still above the 500. So that's how you can utilize the filters with the minimums and maximums to decide how much you want to keep in your input boxes and how much you want to send across into your output box if you want it limited. So there are use cases for that where you may want to limit the amount of output going to a chest for whatever reason, or potentially an industrial crafter, which we'll get to later in the video. Coming back to our first example of the basic storage, what you can also do if you want a more visual idea of seeing whether things are working, you have got the ability on here is you've got various other inputs and outputs, but more specifically you've got filter pass and filter fail. So what you can do is attach these up to lights. So at the moment it's telling us there's a fail for the pass because it's not able to move anything. If we was to move the frags out of here, which means it's now able to pass something, now it's got an easy light just to let you know that conveyor is active, it's moving items. And then what you'll find is when it's reached the maximum that it can input, which if you remember at the beginning we set this to a maximum of 300 frags, it will get to that 300 and then you'll see that the light will go back to being red. So we'll wait for that to change and then we'll move on. So we've now hit the point where there's 300 frags back in this chest, so it's now just telling you that it's no longer able to move items. That could be because there's nothing in the input, it could be because it's reached its task of moving the 300 max over, but it's just an easy indication to see whether or not it's active or there's a problem there that it can't actually resolve. So now we'll get to the behaviour of the conveyor if you've got one input and multiple outputs. Because obviously this is where we're going to be starting to use things like the splitters, but depending on where the conveyor is positioned in the line will determine how things get sorted between your inputs and outputs. So we'll start on this example of putting the conveyor before the splitter. So we come across and your input on the splitter is always the sort of flat ring on the top, and the small bits that pop out the outside, they are your outputs from the splitter. and then of course we need the input from the other chest, and the conveyors do have an electrical pass-through, so you can daisy chain multiple conveyors in a row. So on this example, with the conveyor being the earlier part of the chain, we'll just pop some metal frags in there. What that will do, that will pipe out of your input. It will then evenly distribute to the 3 chests. Now we've not set any filters this time, as you can see it's all blank. We'll just turn it on and let it start to move the metal frags, and what you'll see is as it starts to move items across, you'll find in your outputs it's evenly distributing those frags between your 3 outputs. So you can of course filter this to if you want to limit the items it's going to take through. So we can say metal fragments again, put the high qual in, and it's still only going to move the metal fragments, and we've not set a maximum, so it will just keep piping them across until it hits the threshold. If we were to apply a maximum of 100, what that will do, that will keep piping across until each chest or each output is at a maximum of 100. So this could be 3 chests, it could be 3 different furnaces. As long as it's 3 different storages, it will get them all to 100 and then stop. What you'll then find is if I remove the 100 from here, it will detect that those have gone, and it will carry on piping the metal fragments over to just that particular chest. See, the others are still staying at 100, so it's only piping those into this one until it gets to the 100 again, and it stays balanced. So that's what happens if you put the conveyor before the splitter. Any filters, any minimums, maximums you set in the filter will apply to all of your outputs. So the reverse of this would be what we're going to do over here. So we're going to have our splitter, but this time we're going to put the conveyor after the splitter. So the output from here is going to go into your splitter as normal. Your splitter will then go to the conveyor, and then from the conveyor to your storage. What this will mean is it will mean that all 3 of these conveyors can pull from the 1 input chest, but you can now set individual amounts or filters for each chest. Now this is good if you're trying to create an automated sorting system. So what we'll do, we'll take the power from here, quickly run it across. Again, we can daisy chain these, and then this time we're going to set up individual filters for each of them. So we're going to go for the first one, we'll go with the metal fragments again. We'll set a maximum of 200. For the second one, we'll do the high quality metal, maximum of 150. And the third one, we will do wood to a maximum of 120. So then we will take our input materials, put all 3 of them into here. So this could be the output from a quarry, it could be a drop chest you've got near the entrance to your base, where you then want it to automatically start pulling items out into the respective chests. So we've turned them all on, and what you'll see, they'll all start kicking in. You will see the respective items all starting to disappear from the chests, but in the outputs we're only getting metal frags here, we're getting the high quality into here, and we're getting the wood into here. And what will happen with all of those is they'll go up to the amounts that we specified in the maximum of the filter. So this one was to go to 200. The high qual I believe we set to 150. Yep, so they'll get to 150 in here and stop. The wood got to 120 and stopped, and the metal frags to 200. So now we've put the conveyors after the splitter, they will affect any chest that's in front of them. So we've only got one chest here, but as an example, we could put an extra chest down in front of the high qual here, another chest, and you can daisy chain the chests up to a maximum of 32 different chests or outputs after a conveyor. So if I attach that one into here, so effectively we've now got 2 chests after the conveyor, you can see immediately it started to transfer, and what it's now going to do is apply the same 150 filter to this chest here, but again it's only receiving the high qual. But this would also work with your input, so we could put an extra chest in front of the chain of the inputs. Again, connect the chests in series. We can then pinch some of these from the back, pop them in this chest instead, take them out of there, and this conveyor will be able to see the metal fragments that are in this chest as well. So you'll see in a second it will transfer those, and it's now continuing to do it. So you can have multiple inputs coming through your system, still to a single output, to be filtered accordingly. So this is a good way of making an automated storage system. Now obviously one of the things you can do is you can start incorporating furnaces. One of the neighbours flying overhead. So you'll find a lot of the deployables in Rust, whether that be the smaller electric furnaces, your large furnaces, your chests, composters. There's a lot of things that do have these kind of interfaces that can be attached, and very much like we said before with the daisy chaining, what you can do is link multiples together. So we'll start by attaching all of our interfaces, and then we go from our output to the input, and then what we do is link these directly to each other, and then back to the chest. So this could effectively be an automated sorting. You could have a single chest to be your input and output. You can just put the output from here as a demonstration, we'll come back over and back into here. So you could put your ores in here effectively, and then what it will do, it will pipe them out into the furnaces. Once they finish smelting, it will come out back through this conveyor and back to the same chest. But I do prefer to have a dedicated output chest just to allow for the extra space. We'll bring some power through. And we'll just go and get ourselves some more. Okay, so now we've got ourselves some more and we've hooked up the power for the furnaces. What we can do is put the ore into here. We'll switch all our furnaces on, ready. Now if we turn this on, what you'll see is the ore will start to be moved out of your input chest into the various furnaces along this daisy chain. So we can see the ore all starting to come through into the various furnaces, and it obviously drops down to here. If we turn this one on, you'll start to see that those smelted ores are coming out, and they're going to get moved into the output chest. And there we go. So effectively you could automate your smelting, come in, drop all your ores in, they'll get smelted and brought to an output. Obviously on the survival servers, if you're running quarries, you could have your output to your quarry automatically come straight to furnaces, so as it's being produced, they're being smelted and you're getting that ore back straight away, ready to go. So this is my own sorting system in my base. So you've got all these various chests that are all been marked for having various items in them, and they all link into these series conveyors. So there's one conveyor for each chest, and each conveyor's got its own separate filters in there as to what's going to be going to those boxes. What you'll also find with your conveyors on certain ones is you can set a lot of different filters per single one, there are groups that you can set. So for instance, components is going to be all your comps, and I've also added 2 or 3 other different items in addition to that to go to a certain chest. So this is my drop box, so as I come in, this is the first place I come in and just drop all the bits I've collected. So what I can do is throw everything into here, and you'll see very quickly items are starting to get pulled out and sorted into the respective places. Now some of the odd single items will be difficult to see where they go, but what I can do is show you things like the metal frags, the high qual. If we come over here, you'll see that the number of frags is going up because it's coming from there. You'll find the same with various other chests. So I've got my cloth is coming into this chest, so that's being piped into here, and you can see that those items are all now gradually starting to drop down to be sorted. The low grade fuel's coming out, scrap's being sort of filtered out and coming into its own respective chest over here as well. So this is how you can create a complete sorting system. You did see one that I showed at the very start that had these ones here. So if I've done any manual mining while I've been out, I can drop these into here. Those are currently being filtered to come through to this room here. So all my ores come here, and you can see with the same daisy chaining of all of the furnaces. So they're all being fed into here and coming through. The output is then coming back around to here and being fed into their respective boxes. So we've got sulfur, we've got metal frags, and we've got the high qual. So that's how you create a sorting system. Now I mentioned the auto crafters earlier on. This is where you can automate the crafting of materials. So what I've got here is a small factory I've got set up for crafting explosives. That all links back to the chest in here, so you can see the various inputs that are coming in. You can colour code your pipes by using your pipe tool, which I've left behind. Let's go grab that. Hold R and you can select the colour of the pipes you want to use, just to give you a bit of a visual as to what's going where. So this is various combiners and splitters bringing the inputs in and dividing them up. So for instance here we've got the yellow, which is the sulphur, which is needed for various crafters. It's coming in here being split multiple times. These conveyors are being told to pull through sulphur and charcoal to leave a minimum of 5,000 in their input boxes for me to have some spare to use manually, and a maximum of 500 being fed onto the industrial crafter, which have to be placed onto a workbench. You can place one on the lower shelf and one on the very top. When you open these, you do have to put the blueprint in of whatever item it is you want it to be crafted. So in this case, gunpowder. To get the blueprints, if you're not sure, that is done at a research table. Now, even the defaults like the gunpowder are now able to create blueprints, although you never normally need to use them as they are created. Let's just grab one from here. In the inventory, you don't need a blueprint to craft, but for the use in the industrial crafter, you will need a blueprint. And that blueprint is then placed into the industrial crafter. So this one is currently making gunpowder, as are the other two on the level 2 workbench next to it. And they're obviously pulling in the sulphur and the charcoal as needed. Then I've got 2 gunpowder crafters coming into a single conveyor using a combiner. That conveyor is also picking up sulphur, metal frags and low grade using the 3 lines coming in at the top. They are being fed into this crafter, which is currently creating explosives for me. So this is how you can automate the crafting of a number of items. This could be explosives, it could be guns, it could be armour, it could be basically anything you can get a blueprint for can be crafted in industrial crafters, so it's just where your imagination takes you on that one. I've got another small one here which uses input chests just of wood, piping into the furnaces. They've got a limit set to a maximum of 1,000 wood in each furnace. Let's turn that one on. And then they're going round, and then that charcoal is being piped out into these chests. And much like I mentioned before, these are being used to feed the factory, and where these have got the filters to leave a minimum of 5,000 in their chest, both the sulphur and the charcoal will always have a minimum of 5,000 sulphur in the chest. What we'll do next, I'll move on to some of the more survival specific piping, so things to do with the pump jacks and the quarries, how you can automate that side of things, which is something you can't normally do with the standard Rust industrial system. But due to the mods we have on these servers, they do give you a little bit more scope on some extras you can do, so we'll move on to that next. So what we've got here is my fuel setup for an automating the production of low grade fuel. So as I mentioned earlier on the RustEZ servers, you have the ability to have your own personal pump jacks, which can be purchased off of the online store. And then you can wire these up to your pumping system. So here you can see we can attach the connectors to the output barrel, and you can also attach them to the input barrels at the top. So our ones, they do run on low grade fuel. So we've got two conveyors up the top there. The red pipe is the input, so that's put into low grade fuel into the quarry, the pump jack, and then it's pulling out the crude oil using the conveyor below it. That's coming down and into this particular chest, so you can see the crude oil is coming in here. That's being piped out using this one. I've set it to a maximum of 30, so what that is now doing, that is keeping a maximum of 30 crude available in each of these small refineries and turning it back into low grade. That's then being pulled through the outputs using this particular conveyor here, with just a filter for low grade, and being popped into this box here. And then from here we've got a couple of different outputs. So the output at the top is the input feed that's going back into the pump jack for the low grade fuel, because the pump jacks, they turn one low grade into one crude, so you get a 1 to 3 return, but you do need to keep feeding it with low grade, so that's set as a priority. Now what we have got on there is that's currently set to keep a maximum of 5,000 in stock in there, but with no minimum amount, so it will always prioritise removing the low grade from here to go to that particular item first. But then we've got some other outputs, so you can see there's another output here that comes to a splitter. This goes off to 3 different places, so we'll go to the closest one as it's the most convenient. So this pipe coming off here, you can see is coming up round to here to another conveyor. So this is piping to one of the quarries that you're able to have on the survival servers with RustEZ, and that low grade is being piped into the barrel here, again to be kept a maximum of 5,000. The difference being with this particular conveyor and the way it's set up, if we can get into its filter, it's been told to leave 1,000 at minimum in that low grade chest over there we were just at, which means there's always going to be low grade available for the pump jack, because this is what's producing all our fuel. We want to ensure that that's always got a feed of low grade. These will run out before that does, which means that will always prioritise being the item that's running and producing more. The other pipe you can see coming off of the quarry is the output, which you can see is coming across to this conveyor. There is no filter, so it's been told to pull out the stone, the sulphur, the metal ore and the high quality metal ore, which is then being piped into this chest. This chest then goes back off, it's being split in two at that splitter there, The green line is purely for stone, which is being fed, as you'll see in a minute, right the way back down to the base and into their own chests. The green line is all the ores that require smelting. That's done with these two conveyors having a filter attached, so it'll only pull out the items wanted for those lines. Those are coming round to here and going into these chests. Now we've got combiners here because there's another quarry over there, so I want to be able to pull the inputs from both that quarry and the one behind to come into these two chests. So this is now my sort of buffer storage for both stone and for the ores. They are then being fed down here. Now there is one other conveyor, or one other pipe should I say, you are seeing come out. This line is the one that's going right across and over to feed that quarry. This red line, you'll see, is going towards the base with the rest. So if we follow these lines back down, we come into here. So we'll start with that low grade line. So that's coming in and going to this conveyor here. You can see this has got a filter on it for the low grade. It's got no maximum, but it has got a minimum of 10,000. So this won't try and pull anything out of the chest from outside unless there's at least 10,000 low grade in that chest. Everything over and above that is being fed into here and coming to this chest here, where that's then feeding the various other things in the base that's required. We've then got the green line coming in, which, as I mentioned before, is being separated off. Again, this one is coming in. Now we needed another conveyor here because the first conveyor that was pulling the stone, there is another storage between it and these chests, so that's why there's a second conveyor. And then we've got that feeding all these daisy chain chests. As I mentioned earlier in the video, you can have up to 32 inventories after a conveyor, so I could almost double the number of chests I've got here and have that one conveyor feeding the stone to all these chests. As you can see, the stone's slowly coming in and filling up all these chests evenly. Some I've taken a little bit out of and used, so they're not all perfectly even, but you'll see most of them are roughly there or thereabouts. The blue line coming in, that's coming to this conveyor, which hasn't got any filters assigned because it's only connected to an inventory that's going to have ores in it. That is now piping into this smelting system here, which is a number of electric furnaces. There's not a huge amount in there at the moment, but you can see all the ore from the quarries is coming in, being smelted in here. That line here, which is the grey one, is coming in up to this splitter, but this is then where I want to split out, as I showed earlier on, the fragments, the sulfur and the high quality metal. They're coming through and going into their respective chests, so all of those are being kept separate after the point of being smelted. So all three are coming through this pipe into the splitter, and then the conveyors are deciding on their filters what can then travel down the respective three output pipes and to the chests. So that's how you would effectively automate the pump jack and quarries on the survival servers with RustEZ. So we've got the production of fuel, we've got the fuel being refined. That fuel is then being prioritised to the various areas. So its top priority is going to the pump jack, the second priority is to keep the quarries running, and then any fuel we've got over and above the 10,000, which we're almost about to hit, will then start being pumped for use in the base itself. Now that could be for the use of the auto crafters, it could be used for other forms of crafting, or it could just be for use in terms of fueling vehicles like helis, vehicles and whatnot. But that's the basic fundamentals of the industrial storage system, as well as some of the extras that you can use it for on the survival servers and the Scourge servers on RustEZ. However, the Scourge servers only really have the pump jack as the additional use over the normal system. It's the survival servers that get a lot of extras. You may have noticed earlier in the video we did have our own recycler in the base that was connected to the storage system over here, and you can see that is connected via a combiner into the drop box. So this whole sorting system here, if we recycle items, Let's grab some of those and some of those. So you can have your own personal recycler. Again, it's an item you can purchase off the RustEZ store. You see that these are getting recycled, and then straight away it's pulling those materials out and putting them into the correct chest. Now that'll be the same for the raw resources like metal. It'll also be the same for any components you get out from the items that you're recycling. I don't think I've got anything currently that will give me a component. That might. Let's see if we get the gears off of the stone gate. There we go. So we've got the gears as well, and you'll see the gears will get pulled out as well, and they'll have made their way over into the gears box. So if you do have any other questions regarding the industrial system on the RustEZ servers, by all means join the Discord. The link will be in the description below, and you can ask for the help on there. The community is really good. You'll often find you'll get help from players and any of the active admins on there for your respective server. And by all means, you're always welcome to join one of the servers. Hope to see you soon. Cheers!